On Thursday's episode of the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast with Flip and Steele, it's Fantasy Fallout 2.0, baby, but we're taking a look at fantasy goaltenders you need to have your eye on, and of course, feeding you what we do best, locks of the night, big-time bets, and DFS targets. Let's go.
You're Locked On Fantasy Hockey, your daily podcast on fantasy hockey. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is going on out there, everybody? And welcome back to Thursday's episode of the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast with Flip and Steele. Thank you so much for making us your first listen every single day. And you know where to find us across all platforms. You find your favorite content: Apple Music, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all the good stuff. Make sure you are locked on and tuned in so you don't miss a single big-time bet, DFS target, or fantasy breakdown. On today's episode, my good friends, we are taking a look at Thursday's loaded 10-game DFS and big-time betting board. You know Steele and I have a couple of good picks, some targets, and, of course, locks of the night. Can I bounce back? I hope so, in a big way. Steele, obviously, this week is going to be trade deadline heavy. It's the Fallout 2.0. I said it before. We're here to pick up the pieces. But today, and perhaps most importantly always when you talk about goalies, you have to have your eyes on who is going to be the guy that can get it done for you in the blue paint, because that usually is the make or break for any fantasy team's success.
I said that from the get-go. I believe when we were talking to Josh Wegman, I believe that the goalie is the biggest part of fantasy leagues and fantasy owners. They're a huge part of your team. For me, I believe if you can get two absolute studs, in round 3 or 4 in the drafts, you're going to be rock solid for the entire year in your fantasy league. 2 starting goaltenders are absolutely huge. That's what we're going to get into. We're going to talk about a couple of goalies that were traded at the deadline, some that are injured right now. Let's talk with someone that's injured as of right now. Jack Campbell of the Toronto Maple Leafs. The last 3 months have been a real struggle. He's been sidelined since March 8th with a rib injury. He just started participating in practice, not full participation, but he's back on the ice skating a little bit. So that's a good sign for owners out there who have Jack Campbell in their lineup. So hopefully he can return and get back, but be back for next week. If he can get back to the way that he played last playoffs, as well as the first 3 months of this season, I think the Leafs will make a deep playoff run. But the way he's been playing since the start of January, it's very up in the air right now for me. I'm actually very nervous for the Toronto Maple Leafs going into the playoffs and down the stretch for the last 15 games, because they are tied with the Boston Bruins point-wise. For the first 3 months of Jack Campbell this season, he averaged .928 save percentage with a 2.18 goals against average from October to December. And then from January till now, he's averaged an 895 save percentage with a 3.87 goals against average.
Not good enough.
You can a big lopsided numbers there from the first 3 months to the next 3 months. People that own Jack Campbell right now should be very scared. Hopefully he comes back from injury and he can get back to the way he was playing before, at the very beginning of the season. But I'd be nervous right now. I think this might be a time to sell Jack Campbell, make a couple of trades if you need him. And if you want to go out and get Jack Campbell, you can buy him for low, because his play has been pretty poor since January.
There's a big opportunity here for Jack Campbell to silence the haters. And we are looking at these goalies who are, fantasy value benefited from the trade deadline moves. Yes, we're going to talk about 2 guys that were actually traded, but we're also talking about 2 guys that are going to benefit from, one guy got re-signed and Anton Forsberg, tease, and Jack Campbell, who Toronto did not go out and make the move. So while, yes, I think you're right, spot on for sure, I'm nervous if I'm a Jack Campbell owner. But also, I'm grateful because the Maple Leafs are clearly going to give him another chance to earn that number 1 spot. They really don't have any other option. So I think it's beneficial in a big way for Jack Campbell, because if they added a piece in there, the pressure would have been on, the timeshare would have been there. And now it's basically been, semi-de facto announced by the Maple Leafs. They have to ride or die with Jack Campbell. So whenever he comes back, you got to be throwing him out there, and you got to be taking a chance on him, because you know what? I think that at the end of the day, you'll probably see the real Toronto Maple Leafs team. I hope, I expect, my goodness. So I think this was a good look for Jack Campbell's fantasy value that the Leafs did not add, but we will see, won't we, my friend, down the stretch, if he can really turn it around and get it done. Because I think at the end of it all, if he does not, Maple Leafs are going to be hitting the links, the golf course, real early this season.
Well, they've been doing that the last couple of years. They hit it at the exact same time.
Maybe earlier.
They can't make it out of the first round. So Jack Campbell really has to be on top of his game, and hopefully he can get back to the way he was playing for the first 3 months this season.
Let's hope. And honestly, who knows? Who knows at this point for how, because one month he's lights out, he's setting records, 12-1, and then the next, it seemed, honestly, he's swimming in there. Mrazek is going to get a shot. Nothing is pretty right now in the Maple Leafs net, but that's okay. The next guy I want to talk about, Steele, and I like that you're focusing on two bigger name guys, because I'm going to talk about two guys that are under the radar a little bit, available in a lot of leagues. You're going to be able to go out there and add these guys. Kaapo Kähkönen, who was clearly the odd man out in Minnesota. That was clear once Fleury was added. They dealt him to San Jose, but he arrives in San Jose with a huge opportunity here. And honestly, I want to give this kid, 25 years old kid, whatever. Everyone's a kid to me. In 54 career games, Steele, in mini as the backup, behind a really good team, so maybe take it with a grain of salt, but 31, 17, and 4. 907 save percentage, 2 shutouts, and a 289 goals against. Those are all very respectable numbers. And what I want to say with this guy, and why you have to keep an eye on him, is James Reimer is the number 1 there right now. Aiden Hill is in the mix. They have some options, but are those really good ones? And are those the ones they're moving forward? Reimer is 34. So when I look at Kaapo Kähkönen's numbers, everyone talks about underlying numbers these days. They're solid. He's 6'2". He's a big guy. He moves well laterally. And I'll end it with this. Evgeny Nabokov, who is a very, very good goaltender for the Sharks for many years, is the goaltending coach now in San Jose. Go out and Google his quotes from yesterday about Kaapo Kähkönen, and you'll be sold just like I am, because that guy knows good goaltending, and he literally put the seal of approval on this deal saying, I want this guy. So don't sleep on Kaapo Kähkönen, owned at 11%. He's going to get the start tonight, confirmed against the Edmonton Oilers. They're putting him right in there against McDavid, so let's see how he does, Steele. I don't know what you think about all that.
It's a tough matchup to go against Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl, and your first game with a new team. But
we should see exactly what he's made out of right away.
He's been a solid goalie, a solid backup goalie. I think I like the opportunity he's getting with San Jose Sharks. And we'll see how it goes. But, happy for him. He's getting a new opportunity, and hopefully he can get that starting position.
Exactly.
Let's jump over to the guy that sort of took his spot as a backup for the Minnesota Wild. Marc-Andre Fleury, owned at 94% on Yahoo, 489 fantasy points on the season. Mm-hmm. And I think everyone was really, shocked when the Vegas Golden Knights traded him to Chicago for a bag of pucks. I think everyone was like, what the heck is going on here? I think everyone, I know I was, but I think everyone was pretty surprised as well at how poorly the Chicago Blackhawks were this entire season, with the guys they were getting back, Jonathan Taves from his illness. They got Seth Jones, Marc-Andre Fleury. I think there was a lot more expectations out of that team. I
agree.
And I think it's just great that Marc-Andre Fleury is getting another fresh start with a new team, a playoff team, so we can make another playoff run and hopefully get his 4th Stanley Cup championship. I like everything that Minnesota did with their trade deadline acquisitions, especially with the Marc-Andre Fleury trade. And I really like what head coach Dean Evison had to say about, that trade afterwards. This was his quote. They can do it, right? We talk about our players all the time. It's not just one player scoring goals. Why should it be one guy stopping pucks? So with him just saying that, it's very, very clear that Marc-Andre Fleury and Cam Talbot are probably going to be splitting the remainder of the games for the regular season, which I do like. Yeah, it's a little bit bold, but it's bold.
To go out there and get Fleury and to not run him out there basically every night. Maybe this is the case where he wants to ignite a little rivalry between his goalies and then run with the hot hand. That could be a good coaching tip, but either way, please keep going.
I don't think it's that bold. I like that they're good. I believe that they are going to be splitting the starts for the remainder of the season until playoff time, when they can figure out who's going to be their guy, which is most likely going to be Fleury, because he's going to have better defensive game in front of him. The Minnesota Wild are just a better team overall than the Chicago Blackhawks, but I believe they're going to be splitting the crease for the remainder of the season up until they get the playoffs. But for me, the one amazing thing out of this trade is the professionalism out of Cam Talbot. He was one of the first guys to reach out to Fleury, message him, welcome to the team, to the organization. He's a total professional. It's absolutely amazing to see. And, you know, if Cam Talbot does end up backing Marc-Andre Fleury, he's fine with that. Like, he wants to be in a position that his team is going to win. And if that's going to be the case, then Marc-Andre Fleury might be the starter and Cam Talbot might back up. But again, Talbot is going to be a great backup if that is the case down the stretch.
Says a lot about his character, especially because right after they sign him, what does he do? He goes out there and throws a shutout on the board, right? So clearly he's fired up. Also, there's something to be said about a guy who for most of his career was a backup. So I think he has the makeup of, he understands when it means to step aside. But either way you slice it, we've mentioned about these moves now are going to be exciting to watch on these teams down the stretch. Minnesota's goaltending situation is one to keep an eye on. And either way, going from Chicago to Minnesota, immediately Marc-Andre Fleury's value goes up. So do not sleep on that. If you can acquire him and pay the price, maybe go out there and do it, but maybe you don't. I don't know. That's why you stay tuned Monday to Friday. Thank you for making us your first listen every single day. Make sure you stay tuned around the break. DFS targets, big time bets, our locks of the night. Time to make some money. Speaking of which, it's that time of year again, baby. College hoops and March Madness is in full swing. I've been checking out BetOnline every day. Their odds are pretty solid. Do not sleep on this format. For all of the latest odds, contests, and player props, BetOnline is your #1 source for all your sports betting needs and info. BetOnline remains the best spot for all your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season, and it's not just hoops. BetOnline is a continued source for all your sport wagering information needs, including live betting and your favorite Vegas casino games. Head to the website today and use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and all the action. BetOnline, where the game starts.
Thank you for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every day. For your next listen, check out Locked On Now podcast, nightly recaps of every NHL game with analysis from our local experts. It's free and available on all podcast platforms, just like this podcast right here. So please make sure you hammer the subscribe and follow button and get the latest episodes of the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast as soon as they're available each and every day. Flip and I appreciate all the love and support out there, so thank you so much for that. Let's get right into the DFS selections for Thursday night. You said it off the top, 10 games on the board, a busy schedule. I'm looking at the 2 10 o'clock games for my DFS selections. I'm going to start off with the Predators versus the Vegas Golden Knights.
Okay.
And I'm going to say this right off the bat. I don't think the Vegas Golden Knights are making the playoffs this year. I don't believe they're going to make the playoffs at this point.
I agree.
And before I get into why I don't think they're going to, actually, I get it, pretty much everything I'm going to be saying is why, but I'm just going to list off all the players they have on injured right now. Mark Stone and Alec Martinez are on IR. Braden McNabb and Amadio are on COVID-19 protocols. Pacioretty, Leonard, Riley Smith, Nicholas Hag are all day-to-day. They have 8 of their regular players out to injury right now, and they are losing games like no tomorrow. They're 3-7 in their last 10 games. They're out of a playoff spot right now. They have 16 games left in the season, and the teams that are ahead of them in the wild card position have 2 to 4 games in hand on the Vegas Golden Knights. I don't like the way they've been playing since Mark Stone went to the IR and Jack Eichel came off the IR. 3-7 in the last 10 games. They're not scoring a ton of goals. I like the Nashville Predators all the way in this game, and I'm going with the big guys here, Matt Duchene, Philip Forsberg, and Roman Josi. By far the top 3 players for the Nashville Predators. If I have enough money, I'm also going to go on UC Saros in this matchup as well. But I'm going heavy with the Nashville Predators because the Vegas Golden Knights have been absolutely garbage for the last 2.5 weeks.
And struggling to score, Steele. Like, hey, Buffalo, how's that trade looking now? Like, holy crow.
Alex Tuch has been incredible.
Alex Tuch and Peyton Krebs is going to be a good player. I
Yeah.
don't know where he lands in a lineup every night. And hey, who knows what Jack Eichel's career looks like in Vegas. But right now, if you're the Buffalo Sabres, you're feeling pretty darn good about how that deal has worked out. And I know Buffalo Sabres fans are petty, but I'm here for the pettiness and good for them, because the way that Eichel, snubbed his nose at them the other night or a couple of weeks ago now, good for them. But Steele, you are spot on with everything you're saying. We talked about Nashville at the start of the week. Until that top line starts slowing down, Roman Josi seemingly getting 2 to 4 assists every single night. And that's not even an exaggeration. I think he has 70 points or more now. So realistically, until that team starts to slow down, which it hasn't happened yet, and until the Vegas Golden Knights start scoring, which that hasn't happened yet either, you got to go the way you're going for DFS. I don't think you can go wrong. Also, shout out to Jeannot. I believe he's the goalie rookie scoring leader down the lineup on the Nashville Predators. You could find some value there as well.
Yeah, you can find a ton of value on the Nashville Predators. There was a little small bump in the road Tuesday night against the LA Kings. They lost 6-1 to the Kings that night. So a little small bump in the road. But again,
thank you for mentioning
one of the top teams in the Western Conference. That's actually where I'm going for the second matchup for DFS selections. The LA Kings taking on the Chicago Blackhawks.
Okay.
And because I'm spending a lot of my money in that Nashville game, I got to dial it back a little bit in this one. I'm spreading out the love throughout the entire lineup. I'm going with Adrian Kempe on the top line, who's probably going to be above $5,500. He has slowed down a little bit in his last 12 games, so he probably shouldn't be as expensive as usual. So Adrian Kempe. I'm also going with Trevor Moore on the second line, and then Quinton Byfield on the third line. So definitely going to be some cheaper options on the LA Kings that I really like going into this matchup. Like I mentioned, Kempe has been kind of sluggish for the last 12 games. 1 point in his last 11 games prior to that Tuesday win against Nashville, where he had 2 goals, I believe. But he's up to 505 fantasy points on the season, 28 goals. Year. He's going to get up to 30, 182 shots, 78 hits. So he's getting it all done in all the other categories as well. So I still like his game moving forward. Trevor Moore is having a very, very underrated season.
Agreed.
415 fantasy points, 40 points. He has more points than Adrian Kempe, actually. He also has 3 shorthanded goals. So this guy is deadly on the penalty kill.
That's nice.
He's going to be a cheap option, probably around $3,500, $3,000.
Yep.
And then Quinton Byfield, again, another cheap option. He hasn't done a lot this season, but we've seen this with guys from his draft class still trying to find their footing in the NHL right now. 7 points in 25 games. 2 goals and an assist on Tuesday against the Nashville Predators. So
best
again,
game
another
of his
cheap
career.
option. Best game of his career for sure. And I hope for him to continue that Thursday night against the Chicago Blackhawks. I just really like those 3 guys in this matchup because, again, I'm spending a lot of my money in that Nashville game, so I got to dial it back for the Kings versus Blackhawks.
100%. And I think an interesting point here that I would like to make, since we're talking about the Kings in general, and we've mentioned Josh Wegman now a couple of times, but is how good the LA Kings prospect pool is. Like, real good. And I think you better start paying attention to these LA Kings sooner than later, because they are a force to be reckoned with, especially on a DFS side of things, because that second line, and you mentioned Trevor Moore, Philip Deneau, Victor Arvidsson, lots of value to be found DFS wise with those guys. I'll finish this segment with this, Steele. I'm actually looking to a game where I think is a super advantageous spot for a goalie who's played a lot better of late in Conor Hellebuyck and the Winnipeg Jets at home to the Ottawa Senators. Look, you and I have mentioned this before, that he's been a little bit all over the map, especially by Conor Hellebuyck standards, which are Vezina level standards. So 23, 33, and 9 this year, like, that's a lot of hockey. Actually, is it 23, 23? Anyway, I'll check the stats. It's not great. 2.95 goals against average, 4 shutouts, but he's been a lot better lately. They're 6-2 over their last 8 games as well for the Jets. So I like Hellebuyck at home against the Ottawa Senators, who have not been playing well. I also like the Florida Panthers forward group, who are going to have their chance to play alongside Giroux for, I think, maybe the first time, second time. This is a good spot against the Montreal Canadiens. If you haven't blown your budget on the players that Steele mentioned, definitely take a look at the Florida Panthers, revamped Florida Panthers against the Montreal Canadiens team that gives up a lot of goals. And that's all I have for today, good sir.
Yeah, there's a ton of matchups out there for guys that you can choose from. I really like that you mentioned the Winnipeg Jets because Kyle Connor has been one of the most underrated players this entire season. He flying under the radar. Not a lot of people talk about how well his game is for the Winnipeg Jets. Probably one of their top players behind Mark Scheifele, I got to say. But again, Kyle Connor is on a different level. So you could go with Conor Hellebuyck, Kyle Connor, guys from that Winnipeg Jets game against the Ottawa Senators. And there's a lot of games out there that you can pick for your DFS selection. So we're just naming a few that we like. But again, so many games out there you can choose from.
Most definitely. And make sure you stay tuned Monday to Friday because that's what we do. We feed you the picks. We feed you the locks, the DFS targets. DMs are open. Make sure you don't miss out on the opportunity to hit Steele and I up, and make sure you do not miss out on any opportunity for a brand new episode. Smash the subscribe button. Hit the follow button. Big time bets coming up right around the break. Steele, what do you got for me?
Well, we're gonna dive into big time bets, but don't forget, thank you for making Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every day. Don't forget, we are free and available on all podcast platforms, which also includes YouTube. So make sure you subscribe and follow us. Flip and I appreciate all the love and support out there. So thank you so much. Let's get into big time bets. And Flip, you already know me. You probably already know where I'm going for my big time bets. If you had to take a guess, what's my first bet right here? It's easy. It's easy.
The Nashville Predators?
Oh yeah, it's the Nashville Predators on the money line. I was thinking about taking the puck line, but again, I'm going to play it safe with this game. They probably will win by more than 2 goals, but I'll take the Predators on the money line versus the Golden Knights. And I'm not going to get too deep into it because I already mentioned it as to why the Vegas Golden Knights are bad with all the injuries they have. So Nashville Predators, my first pick on the money line.
And look, those injuries you mentioned to the Vegas Golden Knights, like,
it's massive. It's massive.
Of course, DFS-wise, you're going to want to stay away from them just because those guys are out of the lineup and not available. But from a betting side of things, who wins and loses, it's even more of a knock to what they're able to do on the ice every single night. And until you start to see something from the Vegas Golden Knights, that's a team that has to be faded hard down the stretch because they are dropping like a stone. Mark Stone? Whoa, I had to. Anyway. You like that one, eh?
That was good. That was good.
My first pick of the night, and I've been hitting unders a little bit. I wasn't very lucky at the start of this show with unders. I'm back to hitting unders. If you take a look at box scores right now, people, the number is going under the total in a lot more games. Why? Playoffs are looming. Teams are tightening up. The top dogs in the league aren't effing around anymore. It's time to get serious, and you're seeing that in results every night. I look at Thursday's board, and what do I see? Tampa Bay Lightning at Boston Bruins. This is a big time matchup for two teams who might have to go through each other at some point, most likely. How many times have I said measuring stick games, and how many times do those go under the number? A good percent of the time. Despite the total going over the number in the last 2 games against these two, these are 2 of the best defensive teams in the league, Steele. And I think this is one of those games that right from puck drop, especially because what happened last time? Boston smacked around Tampa 5-2. You know Tampa's now revamped that lineup. You know they're coming for blood, and I think that's going to be a tight, low-scoring playoff atmosphere type game. Give me the under 6.5. I believe it's at 6. I'm going to tease it up to 6.5. For a lesser odd. We'll release that odd later today. That odd is not up yet, but give me the under 6.5 Steele. I think this is going to be a low scoring affair.
That's actually a game I was looking at too, in the exact same angle, looking forward to the playoffs. I was looking at Tampa's schedule. They play the Boston Bruins Thursday night, their last time against them in the regular season. They play the Maple Leafs 2 more times, and then the Florida Panthers just once before playoffs come. So going up against these Atlantic teams in the regular season, you got to get a feel for their game going to the playoffs, because as of right now, we really don't know what the matchups are going to be, because Boston and Toronto are tied right now. Tampa's trying to catch up to Florida. I believe Florida's at 90 points and Tampa's at 84 right now. So they're still trying to get first in the Atlantic division. So we'll see what happens. My second pick of the night is the LA Kings on the puck line versus the Chicago Blackhawks. I believe this is going to be a high scoring game, especially on the Kings side of things, with all the, with everything that's happened with the Chicago Blackhawks this season. It just seems like, it's just one of the worst years for the Chicago Blackhawks, especially
it's been
with
a tough one.
With all the I'm blanking on the word.
Kyle
Anyway,
Beach, off ice.
Yeah, Kyle Beach, the off ice incidents, even the on ice incidents, trading Marc-Andre Fleury, them just not being a good team. There's a lot of things, but Kings on the puck line versus Chicago Blackhawks. Kevin Lankinen is not the guy. I've said that since he pretty much came into the league last year. Mm-hmm. And I like the Kings on the puck line. We'll get the odds later today, as they're not out right now.
Kings also just exploded for 6 goals. So if that's a sign of things to come, perennially a team that hangs its hat on the defensive end of things. So if they can get the offensive side of things going with John Quick and Cal Peterson playing as well as they have, don't be shocked if you see the LA Kings in the first round of the playoffs. I don't know about after that, but they are definitely good enough to make the playoffs. So I like where you're working there. My second pick of the night, not my lock of the night. I sent you a screenshot of my picks from Tuesday. I've been hitting player props. You can get some decent odds for anytime points. And these premium guys, Steele, it's not going to be over under a half a point. You're going to have to get it up at 1.5 points. You're going to get some good odds. Connor McDavid, I'm going back to the well, playing the San Jose Sharks, 20 career games against the Sharks, 11 goals, 15 assists. I love this spot for another big McDavid night. McDavid goes, Edmonton goes. He doesn't play great. They usually don't play great. Even in losses, though, he's getting his. The other night, 2 assists in a loss. I see this as another great spot for McDavid to continue to pad his lead for that Art Ross trophy. My goodness, is this guy good. Still leading the league with 93 points, and he hasn't had the most consistent of seasons. But other than their last game, Edmonton was starting to look pretty good, reeling off wins in 5 straight games from March 9th to 19th. Give me Connor McDavid over 1.5 total points at plus 25, plus 125, plus 130. It's going to be a good odd. This guy's going to have a big game against a San Jose team that is not very good. Timo Meier might be out. Jonathan Dahlin might be out. I love this spot for Edmonton in general, but give me another player prop. I've been hitting them. Connor McDavid has a big night, at least 2 points for my second pick of the night, Steele.
Oh, I guess I don't really have to say much because that is actually my lock of the night. Connor McDavid, anytime goal against the San Jose Sharks.
Let's go.
You pretty much covered everything, so I don't have to even get into it. But Connor McDavid being one of the best players in the league right now.
That's it.
And leading in the point race with Huberdeau, Draisaitl, Matthews, all those guys.
Yes,
McDavid, anytime goal for me. He's probably going to be at plus 30, which he was on Tuesday. He didn't hit for me on Tuesday because I took Connor McDavid on Tuesday against the Dallas Stars.
2 assists.
Didn't score a goal, so I'm going back to McDavid for anytime goal on Thursday night for my lock of the night.
I love that, and I'll leave this stat for all those people questioning the multi-point game. How about 34 games this season, McDavid has recorded 2 or more points? I don't know. I need to say much more after that. McDavid is going to have a big game for me and Steele. My lock of the night, though, and we haven't talked a lot about this team, Steele, and I think they deserve a little bit of credit for finally playing some pretty good hockey in the Winnipeg Jets. I talked about a big reason being Conor Hellebuyck. You talked about a big reason in Kyle Connor. Those two guys have been really solid of late. And I will say this about Conor Hellebuyck, right? They need him to be good. He's been a lot better over his last, let's see here, 7 or 8 games. He is 5-2, 1 shutout. He's playing much better. I like this spot at home for the Jets to continue to roll. We know Ottawa has struggled. 6-12 over their last 18 games against Winnipeg. They are 1-6 in their last 7 on the road and have only 3 wins in their last 10. That's the last stat I'm throwing out there. Hammer Winnipeg tonight. I think this is a big game for them against a team that is struggling. Peg is rolling. Peg plays good at home. Ottawa doesn't play good on the road. I'll say no more. Big Flips lock of the night. Winnipeg Jets on the puck line, minus 111, because this is a great spot for them. And I think Hellebuyck has a great night.
All right, there it is, folks. Flips lock of the night. Winnipeg Jets on the puck line against the Ottawa Senators. My lock of the night, McDavid, anytime goal versus the San Jose Sharks. So I guess what we're trying to say here is maybe don't pick up Kaapo Kähkönen until after the Edmonton game, and then you can go out and pick him off the waiver wire. So lock it in, pencil it in, put your money down, make your money. This is where the money's made, big time bets. This is where we try to help you out there. Thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every day. If you want more gambling advice on what you should pick, but for not just hockey, make your second listen Locked On Bets, your daily one-stop shop for all your gambling needs. Locked On Bets, hosted by your boy Q with insight from Lee Sterling. It's free and available on all podcast platforms, just like this podcast right here. So please make sure you hit the follow, hit the subscribe button, and you'll get the latest episodes of Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast as soon as they're available each and every day, Monday to Friday, 7 o'clock in the morning Eastern time. And like we say all the time, thank you so much for all the love and support out there. Flip and I appreciate it. Thank you again for tuning in for today's episode with Flip and I. Have a great day. Good luck with all your bets out there. And we shall see you back here again tomorrow.
Peace.